Okay, so this is part 2 of reading from my Saturn book, and it's for all of you who have your natal Saturn in aspect to natal Uranus. Very, very big, important. So let's continue here on this reading, and I might backtrack just a little bit so we can get back into where I left off. I'm going to start at the top of the page. Recently, it has become evident through scientific experimentation that thought has the power to affect matter. This is truly a vindication of the Uranian vision. We are beginning to deduce through the fringe schools of healing and medicine, such as radionics and homeopathy, that man is composed of more subtle kinds of energy than the physical body alone, and that thought affects these subtle energies and in turn affects the state of physical health. Now, almost 200 years after this discovery, Uranus is beginning to make himself known to man in a truly meaningful way. It has taken us 2 centuries to feel the impact of the archetype in the field of consciousness. Through these new eyes, Saturn also emerges in a different form, and the opportunity available to the individual with Saturn-Uranus contacts is perhaps along the lines of earthing or making manifest the creative vision of Uranus. In ordinary personality life, these contacts tend to be connected with a kind of bobbing back and forth between the extremes of convention and the extremes of individual self-expression. As we habitually use these terms in relation to Saturn and Uranus, they need to be more closely examined so that the aspect is more comprehensible. Saturnian convention has to do with the formal structures of society and of behavior which facilitate self-protection and separateness. Okay, so that's Saturn. This is not the subtle adjustment to social and individual need, which is a strong feature of the watery type of person, particularly the Cancerian. It is rather a forced emphasis on a form of behavior simply because it has been done that way before and once held significance. Saturnian convention does not grow with the growth of man's psyche, but crystallizes in forms of ceremony which become empty shells devoid of life. This, however, is not the function of Saturn. It is the result of the unconscious individual's response to Saturn, which is a different thing. Individual self-expression, as it is evidenced by the Uranian type, is usually adherence to an idea which is perceived by the individual intuitively, rather than absorbed from the environment, and which is conceived to be more true, more real, and more substantial than the conventional structure. Okay, so all of you are here to whatever traditional structures that Saturn or the past traditions have just been gone on because it just automatically gone on, regardless if it has meaning or not. You're to break that. That's what you're here for. You're to break that, any of those structures on a individual base and also a generational base or unity base for all of humanity. That's really big stuff. Because there are a lot of traditions that you're just going, everyone is just doing them just because, just automatically. And there's no thought process, and you don't even know why you're doing it anymore. And I'm talking not just on a personal level, you personally, but you are included, especially you, those of us that have Uranus and Saturn. I have Saturn opposing my Uranus. That's a hard aspect. So all of us that have this, we are to break those traditions that are not, they're not useful. They are not, they are stagnating us as individuals and us as a whole, especially now in this Aquarian age. Wow. Okay. Saturnian convention does not grow with the growth of man's psyche, but crystallizes in forms of ceremony which become empty shells devoid of life. Blockages is how I see the word, as blockages. This, however, is not the function of Saturn. It is the result of the unconscious individual's response to Saturn, which is a different thing. So any individual, any of us individually that have this placement, that's why any devastation, any destruction, any structure coming down personally for each and every one of us who has this placement, that's why it's happening, is because we too have become complacent, and it has just been something automatic, and it's something that is stopping us from our further growth. So, but you can know for sure that it's also, we're not just breaking this down for ourselves, we're breaking it down for all of humanity as well. It's a great, great, great thing. And assisting others to also be able to do it as well. And I'm going to include our south nodes with that. Huge, huge, big deal. Big deal. Okay. Let's see. Where was I now? Let's see here. Individual self-expression, as it is evidenced by the Uranian type, is usually adherence to an idea which is perceived by the individual intuitively, rather than absorbed from the environment, and which is conceived to be more true, more real, and more substantial than the conventional structure. There you go. It is not necessarily selfish, because it may be an idea which incorporates the safety or welfare of the group. That is exactly right. And this is usually the case with Uranus. He does not fight for himself, but fights on behalf of and as an example to the group. The difference between Saturnian and Uranian codes is that the Saturnian has been demonstrated workable by the past, although this is no guarantee of future relevance, while the Uranian is a reality in the mind and has no demonstration except in the vision of the intuition. Given a contact between these planets, the individual usually tries to ally himself with one or the other, not realizing that each without the other is incomplete. In the ordinary individual who has not worked toward the development of a Uranian consciousness, this capacity to see a whole vision and use the vision as a basis for the ideas by which one lives is largely an unconscious function and is in the process of slowly emerging into consciousness. Uranian energy is then usually expressed in sudden crises, which may involve conflicts with public authority, with parents, or with anything which contains the symbolic value of tradition or of opinions rather than ideas directly conceived. I'm going to read that sentence again. That's very important because this is part of what we're to do. This is what we're to do, but we are going to bring, just by our personal Saturn in aspect to our personal Uranus, we're going to bring this conflict. It's going to come up for us in some way, whether with some authority figure, whether it's on the outside or parents or any authority figure. And it can happen more than once. With those authority figures that are trying to keep the same traditions going, and we are intuitively knowing that it's supposed to stop. That specific tradition is supposed to end because it's not doing any of us any good anymore. It might have in the past, but it's not anymore. And we instinctively, intuitively know this. And you intuitively, instinctively know this, even if you don't consciously. That's why you're coming into confrontational situations with others in authority right now. Okay. Uranian energy is then usually expressed in sudden crises which may involve conflicts with public authority, with parents, or with anything which contains the symbolic value of tradition or of opinions rather than ideas directly conceived. And I have to say also, we are coming from the Piscean age where everything was locked down, subconscious. If you don't know the different Piscean personality, the Pisces has everything to do with the subconscious, the 12th house, the unconscious, being deceived, secrets, the unknown, fantasy. And now, so we're coming from that age into the Aquarius age, which has everything to do with the truth on a humanitarian scale for all of humanity. So Pisces. So and that's what you can see out in the world now is we didn't know what was really going on and how we were being controlled. The slavery system, this of the elite, of the government, whatever you want to say. I'm not going to go too far into that for those of you that don't know, but check into that. If you don't already know, those of you that know, you know what I'm talking about. And there's a fight. There's a fight to keep things in the Piscean age, to keep that past, to keep those secrets, to keep the same going, to keep the same government in place, and keeping us where we are, the common folk, common population. Aquarius is saying, we're at lockerheads, and this is very, very extreme. Pisces is the most extreme to Aquarius and Uranus. What ordinarily happens is that Uranus, disguised as chance, brings about an event which temporarily shatters the apparent safety and solidity of social values and ways of thinking based on tradition. The individual who is not able to express this urge in a conscious manner who has simply never bothered to think for himself or to stretch his mind up into the heavens instead of rooting it in the earth, is usually at the mercy of eruptions from below, which he himself has attracted. Again, which each one of us who has this aspect has attracted to ourselves. We have attracted it unconsciously in the form of external events. And again, I have to say, especially now, right now in time, we can see this going on, and we will continue to see this going on. Today is May 8th, 2022. The collapse of the business, the sudden conflict with the law, the disruption of the marriage, the accident are all different masks through which Uranus, symbolizing the need to free oneself from identification with the outward trappings of life, which are so often thought of as oneself, makes himself known as a collective urge working through the psyche of an individual. So this is a collective thing that each one of you are or will or have already personally gone through. You are assisting the collective to go through this whole event. This is what's happening now in our time, right now, going from the Piscean age to the Aquarius age. The natural planet for Pisces is Neptune, for anyone that doesn't know already. And again, Aquarius age, Uranus. That's why the truth is coming out now. We were told one thing, we believed one thing, and now the truth, the real truth is coming out, because we could be in the Piscean age, we all were under that same energy of secrecy and subconscious. We didn't know, and we were not able to know. Now we are. And as we keep moving forward, day by day, farther into the Aquarius age. Okay. The presence of Saturn-Uranus contacts seems to suggest that the time for conscious reevaluation of the source of ideas is now. Absolutely, it is now. We are at the forefront of this transformation, of this conscious evaluation of the traditions of the past and what we need and must break from to go into the future, into something brand new. Freedom is another word for Aquarius in the Aquarian age. Freedom, spontaneity, quick change. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read that sentence again. The presence of Saturn-Uranus contacts seems to suggest that the time for conscious re-evaluation of the source of ideas is now. The individual is faced with the challenge of demonstrating his own magical powers over circumstance by first declaring his emergence into psychological adulthood by thinking independently. That's another Uranus and the Aquarius age is independent thinkers. Even if the effect of these contacts is not observable in a pronounced way because it is largely unconscious, in some quarter of life, this challenge is offered. If it is not consciously accepted, the individual will usually contrive a way by which he forces himself to accept, and then he calls it chance. If any planet may be said to have a connection with the law of synchronicity, it is probably Uranus. This contact sometimes is concurrent with the political or social anarchist, whether he is effective or not. Saturn may react a good deal of fear. Wait, let me read that again. Saturn may react with a good deal of fear to what he feels as a powerful threat from the forces of chaos. So you be ready to be fearful, to feel fearful, and that's coming from Saturn, because Saturn is that authority figure, that energy of structure, and we've got to keep this structure. No. And then Uranus is coming along going, boom, we're going to knock the legs out from under Saturn, that structure, whatever it is. And I'm not laughing at any of us, because it is painful, and I definitely experientially I have gone through this, so I do understand. Uranian vision usually seems chaotic to Saturn because it has no prior tangible demonstration. It is wholly a gift of the world of ideas, meaning it hasn't come into form yet. You can't see it in the physical yet. So it's coming from your intuition, your other senses, your unseen ability, like Neptune. But you're in the process of bringing it into form. We have to do this first. Thoughts are things. We must do this, and Uranus is in giving us the ability, all of us, right now, to do this in our lives, in this Aquarian age. How beautiful is this? How beautiful. This fear may help to produce a person obsessed by law, or it may contribute to a person obsessed by the need to prove himself free of the law. Either way, it is an obsession which stems from a feeling of powerlessness against the enormous power of collective forces. Again, that's just a feeling. The group of which the individual is a part seems to demand that he make a choice. So you might feel like you are standing against, let's say, I'm going to use the example of your religion. Maybe some of you, your religion, whatever specific religion you were brought up in, your belief system, and you're now seeing the truth of it. And so you are feeling, maybe even physically seeing from your pastor or your friends that are in the same church group or religious group, or your family members, parents, grandparents, getting angry because you're bringing something new to the table. You're bringing a truth to this structure, this religious structure, this family belief system that's been going forever. And you feel you're alone against all the others, your family or the whole church or whatever that is. But you are doing the right thing. You are. So keep going. Keep going. And those of you that have that fear of fear comes up and you haven't been able to go beyond that, you're going in the right direction. That fear is telling you, take a look, take a closer look at whatever that belief is, whatever that is that's bringing that terror to you. Because that structure, Uranus is saying you must take a look at that structure. You must annihilate that structure because there's something that's blocking. There is a huge block, and it's not just for you. It's for your whole group, your whole family, all of humanity, whatever it is, you keep going. And I know it is not easy. It is not easy, especially when it's family members, it's friends that you're having to oppose, and they might even leave your life. I do know this. I've had this happen. My whole family, all of my friends, all of my family, including my child, my marriage. This happened years and years ago. But still, I did go through this, so I know what this is talking about. At times, I didn't think I was going to make it. Okay, so let me get back to the reading here. Let's continue on. This fear may help to produce a person obsessed by law, or it may contribute to a person obsessed by the need to prove himself free of the law. Either way, it is an obsession which stems from a feeling of powerlessness against the enormous power of collective forces. The group of which the individual is a part seems to demand that he make a choice. He feels he must act for or against the larger, more impersonal social structure which surrounds him. He usually tends to identify his personality with one half of the group. If he attempts to isolate himself from the social currents of his time, he is usually compelled by circumstances which he himself unconsciously attracts to abandon his isolation. Whether he likes it or not, whether it is inconvenient or not, the collective psyche calls to him, and some part of his defensive shell is usually sacrificed so that he can grow into a broader understanding of the larger life of which he is a part. It is probably not strictly true to say that Saturn-Uranus contacts concur with personality traits, since these aspects do not have much to do with the personality in itself. They have more bearing on the relationship of the individual to the group and to what happens to his psyche at the point of contact. Some people are more expressive of the spirit of their time than others, and some are consciously aware of their participation, while others blindly help to shape the society of the future without understanding the nature of their own suffering and its collective aspects. There definitely seems to be some connection between one's sensitivity to the ideas symbolized by the outer planets and one's capacity consciously to live these ideas out in practical life. If the vehicle of response lacks sensitivity, that is, if the individual's level of awareness is too narrow to permit him conscious realization of the importance of the larger world around him, then Saturn-Uranus contacts will still affect him and draw him into the group needs at the expense of his own ego structure. But he will not understand what has happened to him. It will seem to him to be the cruel hand of fate. Every planet seems to be asked to make a sacrifice when it contacts Saturn. And the nature of this sacrifice is usually in the area of having to resolve a moral conflict between the shadowy and bright sides of the personality by shifting the center of a broader scope of consciousness. This idea of solving the conflict of opposites by moving the center of the fight so that it is large enough to contain the thought, to contain the opposites within it, is basic to both psychological and esoteric thought. We may also find this motif in mythological, as in the story of Hercules fighting the Hydra. The Hydra cannot be conquered by the ordinary fighting methods. In order finally to slay it, Hercules is forced to his knees so that he can hold the monster up to the sunlight. It is the complete shift in approach which accomplishes the completion of the labor. Any planetary contact with Saturn suggests a conflict of opposites between the bright face of the planet and the psychic urge which it symbolizes, and the dark, shadowy face of Saturn, who will always oppose it. Out of this struggle comes the possibility of raising the conflict to a new level so that the entire person grows from the experience. To accomplish this, he must first see the struggle and understand its nature. Then he can begin to work with his opportunity. The conflict which ensues from Saturn-Uranus contacts seems to occur between the isolated self and the idea of the group as a unit or living organism, held united by the shared thoughts of its members. The old argument of whether it is possible to remain an individual while being part of a collective unit is brought up here, and for the person who has a Saturn-Uranus contact, it seems to be part of his psychic equipment to demonstrate the reality of this combination of opposites. The psyche appears to urge itself toward being individually fruitful and productive, yet at the same time being group conscious and able to contribute one's work to the development of the whole. It has been very difficult for us in the past to demonstrate any kind of fusion of these two opposing poles, and the conflict has resulted in political ideologies which sacrifice either one or the other without achieving any kind of integration. In the individual, the conflict tends to produce those people who are furious individualists with a hatred of everything Saturnian, and those people who are furiously loyal to the old system which protects the rights of the individual but has no pity on the individualist. The individual with Saturn-Uranus must generally solve his own problem of integration between these two kinds of law and two apparently contradictory kinds of authority, so that he can join hands with those to whom he is connected by his humanity and work toward the same kind of integration within the group. This kind of integration seems to be a special gift of the Aquarian personality, and it is possible that with the advent of the next astrological age, Aquarius, the same gift can be extended to everyone, and that is what's happening now. It sounds okay. Again, what did I say? Those of us with Saturn, Uranus in aspect to each other, we're at the forefront. All of us are at the forefront. But now the Aquarian age is coming in, and the farther we get in, we're to show everyone is to have this, is coming into or will come into this, even if they don't have this aspect, will be awakened in this same similar way as Saturn in aspect to Uranus, as we have been, or you are currently, or you will very soon. So, amazing, amazing. So that is all I have for now. I hope this helped. I'd love to hear your comments, any questions, and if you would like a written copy of both of these parts. Okay, until next time.